This video will serve as an introduction to building forms for Integrify administrators. To begin, under the Administration menu, choose Forms, and to create a new form, click Add Form, and you can either create a new one from scratch or import one. So we're going to create a new one today for this training. I'm going to name this PTO Request Training, and then we're going to give it a category, and then click Save. Now Integrify will then take you to the Form Builder screen. So here in the Form Builder, you are able to drag and drop different question and layout types. In a form, you can have sections and containers for layouts. Sections are what house containers, and you can add multiple containers to the sections. And our containers are what house our questions. So you can see here, every time you create a form, by default, a section with one container will be added. So I'm going to drag in a question type to show you the different editing options. So on each field in the form and each element, there is a pencil icon for editing, a copy button to duplicate the field, and an X to delete. For sections and containers, there's a pencil and an X to edit and delete there. So I'm going to change the name of this first section by clicking on the pencil icon and changing the label. I'm going to put Request for PTO and click Save. And now you can see that the section name has been changed. One thing to note about containers is you can make this one container multiple columns by clicking on this pencil icon, and I can make this a 3-column container. So now you can see these division lines here, which allow you to add questions to each column within the container. Now I will go over the most common question types that are used within a form. So the short text field is a single line text entry field. So I'm going to drag in 2 of these, and I'm going to name the first one first name and last name. So you can see as I'm dragging in fields here, I can change the label or the name of the question. As I drag it in, if I don't click off, I can change the name of it here. Or if I drag it in and click off the screen and need to change the label, I can change that under the pencil icon and edit the label there. Now on this request for PTO, we want to make the first and last name and most other fields we're going to make required as well. So the user will not be able to submit the form unless they enter these fields. So under this pencil icon, you can see there's a validation tab, and we can check the required box to make this field required. And I'm going to click Save Changes, and now you can see the field is now required. I'll do that same thing for last name and click Save Changes. The next field I'll drag in is a select list, and I'm going to name this one Department. The select list produces a drop-down list of values, and the list values may be static or bound to a database query. Under the pencil icon of the department select list, I can create a static list of departments by clicking this multi-choice options tab. And here is where I can add multiple options in the select list. So I'm going to add HR, add option, and marketing. And how you add another option is by clicking this add option button, and that will continue creating more fields within the select list. I'm going to do sales, IT, and customer service. And I can also rearrange the order these are in by dragging and dropping here. One thing here to note in this select list question is this value field. This is going to be what is stored in the database when the user submits the form. So the label is what is displayed to the user, and the value is what is stored in the database when it is submitted. And the system will fill in the blanks when you save it, defaulting the value to the label value. But the best way is to just hit Tab when entering in these values here. If you don't do this, if you just leave the values blank, Integrify will automatically pull over the label for the value name. I'm also going to make this field required under the Validation tab and click Save Changes. Now if I jump over to this Preview tab within the form, I can see that the department select list has all those values listed there. Jumping back over to the Form Builder screen, the next field I'm going to drag in is radio buttons. These are a series of buttons, and these can be a static list or also bound to a database query. So I'm going to name this type of PTO. And then under the pencil icon, very similar to the select list, under the multi-choice option tab, I'm going to add multiple radio buttons. And I'm going to name this vacation, sick, jury duty, or other. I'm also going to make this field required and click Save Changes. And now I can see that my radio buttons have been populated. I'm also going to drag in another short text field under these radio buttons that say, if other, please explain. And we will use this field for a rule later. Next field I'm going to add is a calendar. It's a pop-up calendar to control dates. So here I'm going to add in start date. And I'll add another one for end date. And I'm also going to make both of these fields required under the validation tab. The final field I'm going to add is a long text field. And this is going to be a multi-line text entry field. It's typically used for long descriptions. So I'm going to make this comments/additional information. So the user can enter in any additional details about this PTO request. So I'm going to jump over to the preview tab and I can see how this form looks. We have our radio buttons, our department list, and our start and end date calendars. If I click the submit button on this preview tab, it'll show me which fields are required and showing that the user will not be able to submit this form without inputting these fields. You can see that we have this if other please explain field, and it displays no matter which selection that we make. So we want to make this field conditionally display for the user if they select other. We're going to do that under the rules tab. So here we're going to add a new rule and we're going to give it a name. So we're going to do PTO type other. Next, I'm going to select add condition. So this condition is going to be that if the type of PTO, so this type of PTO question equals other. So if the user inputs an other PTO request, we're going to add an effect that the question of if other please explain will now show. And we're also going to add another effect for that same question to make it required. So now what this rule is stating is that if they select the PTO request type of other, the if other please explain will now be shown and required. I will also select create inverse rule at the top, which will create a similar rule with the inverse effect. So I'll show you what that looks like. I'm going to click save and you'll see a validation message rule saved at the top. And if I click back, you can see under the rules tab, there's a PTO type other, the one we just created, and now we have the inverse. So I'll click into that to show you what the system did. You can see that if the type of PTO request is not other, it will hide and make this if other please explain field unrequired. So I'm going to jump over to the preview tab to show you how that just worked. So now you can see if I select vacation, sick, or jury duty, nothing happens. But once I select other, that field pops up and now it is required. And if I select another field again, that field goes away. So that is how the rule and inverse rules are working on this question type. So we went over the form builder and the rules. Now I'm going to jump over to this JavaScript tab. This is another way that you can control the form's behavior through JavaScript. We do have the JavaScript documentation right here on our help site. And you can see the general scripting in Integrify. We have examples and reference. So that is an option for controlling the form's behavior in Integrify. You can also style your form, containers, and individual questions by using CSS or cascading style sheets. You can do this under the CSS tab. We do have CSS templates on our help site under form styles. You can see it down at the bottom. If you click see more, we have a video on how to use these templates and also the code that you can just copy and paste right into Integrify to change the style of your forms. I also showed you the preview tab. This is where you'll jump in between the form builder and the preview to view what the form is going to look like to your end user. And then also under this detail tab, you You can see that there is ways that you can change the name of the form, you can edit the category, you can change the description, and also we have more information here at the bottom. We can also choose role memberships for this form, so that's in roles and permissions. We can delete it, copy it, create a version, and we can also see all the question labels and client IDs in a list view. We can export a CSV or a JSON version of these questions as well. And you can also export this form. And finally, under the References tab, this will show you which process and task this form is used in. So this will be able to cross-reference multiple processes. If this form is used in multiple places, you'll want to be checking this References tab just in case if you're making changes to a form, there could be multiple processes that this form is involved in, and you don't want to make changes if it's connected. So you might want to be able to make a different version or copy of this form for that use. Now you are able to understand the basics of building a new form in Integrify. If you need any assistance with building forms, always feel free to reach out to your customer success team.